Hello, and welcome to the Blue Collar Wealth Club. I am one of your hosts, Sheena White.
And I'm your other host, Jerry Garcia.
So today, we want to talk about what to do to protect yourself when you are buying a business. We've been talking a lot lately about purchasing businesses and growing through acquisition. Excuse me, but I've had a lot of issues pop up lately with clients having problems post-purchase. And so if we can look at things before we buy the business or in the purchasing to make sure that we don't have issues post-close.
Right. And setting things up during purchase with paperwork, documentation to avoid some of these mistakes. Because you've had some pretty gnarly situations come up with clients recently that kind of led us to want to talk about this. I mean, there's some really far-reaching implications for things to go wrong and how much they can impact, not only that business acquisition, but how that business operates during the transition period. And there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. Well, and then also, when it comes to due diligence and what all that means, because one of the things I learned, one of my clients, they bought a business and they found out significantly after the fact that the former owner had taken out some loans from their credit card processor, but the money had come in at like the same as income, and the previous owner had marked it as income. So that was utilized in the income calculations, and so that was seen as profits when it was actually a loan. So yes, it was totally on the wrong area of the P&L and the balance. It wasn't even on the balance sheet. But then the issue is that fraud? Is that a problem? And so I was actually talking to a business attorney yesterday about this, and she said that that's what due diligence is for. And basically, unless you can prove that they purposely, not that they did mismark it, but purposely mismarked it in order to defraud the potential buyer, then that is what due diligence is for.
Well, I think this is one instance where a business broker can maybe protect the seller from themselves, right? You want to put your company in the best light. And the only reason I say that is we're really not big on business brokers. But in doing some due diligence of our own on a business we're looking to purchase, it came out that as we dug into the numbers, a lot of the positive numbers over the last few years on this business came from either ERC credits or from PPP forgiveness, right? Mm-hmm. And they were marked as such in the books. Everything looked good. We were able to take those out of our calculations on how this business was actually profiting. And in talking to the broker about the deal, he said, I had to actually get them to switch some things because they had basically listed that as income or as almost like as if it was a job that they got paid on. Before he came in and said, no, you can't do that. So in some cases, that's where, that's one of the positives of actually having a business broker is helping you to have a better understanding of where your business actually stands.
Yeah. Well, I think that, so we found one benefit to a business broker. Yay. We finally found one. But yeah, so because this client, I don't believe they used a business broker, but I know that they used one attorney for both sides of the deal. And it was the attorney that was the seller's attorney. And so I'm not saying that attorney did anything wrong. Like I don't know him from Adam, so I have no idea. But I would say get your own professionals, get your own people, right? When you buy a home, you get your own home inspector. You don't generally use you don't take an inspection report that was already done. You hire your own. You generally speaking have your own realtor. In certain states, you have your own attorney. So why in buying a business should it be any different? Hire your own professionals, because that's the thing, right? So this attorney was telling me, she's like, basically, if they caught it in due diligence, then we could have redone everything. But because they didn't, it's on them for not catching it unless they can prove that it was purposely fraudulent. And that becomes super difficult because, we've been dealing with some legal stuff, and what you can prove in court and what are two completely different things.
Right.
Everything is basically hearsay. So you can't use any of it. Like if anybody told you something or you have an email, 99% of everything you have is technically hearsay. So just tell yourself, I probably can't prove anything.
Right. Unless you have something, very documented from that specific person. Yeah, it's probably hearsay.
Unless you have like an email from them like, yeah, I did that on purpose to defraud you. You're pretty screwed.
Yeah.
It's not gonna.
And that's it. Like even if you're going to use that seller's attorney to draw up paperwork and make sure that everything from that legal standpoint is done, right? You can still take all the financials that they're providing you during your due diligence period and take that to a third party and say, hey, I need to take a look at this. How does this look? Is there anything I need to be aware of? Because even if you take that to somebody like a CPA and they're going to, and if they're a good CPA and you tell them, I'm looking to buy this business, I need to make sure that the value that I'm using, based on these numbers is accurate, right? They can go back and they can say, well, look, you have this here. This is a huge, employee retention credit that's showing $200,000 worth of income, but it's not actual income. So you probably want to remove that from your calculations on what this business cash flows, which then impacts the value.
Or like on this one, like, oh, hey, there's this giant deposit from the payment processor, but there's no invoice that goes with that. Why?
Right. Yeah, let's ask about that.
How is there a huge deposit with no invoice? Where's who's the customer? What do they do there? You need to ask more questions. And then they would have found it, right? So just having those independent evaluators or looking at maybe a quality of earnings report and having that done. And I know these things are expensive, right? You're thinking to yourself, oh man, I don't want to pay $5,000 to $50,000 for a quality of earnings report. But that's the thing. Now my client potentially overpaid hundreds of thousands of dollars for this business, and there may be nothing we can do about it.
Right? I mean, now you just have to go in and try and make that business worth what you paid it for.
Yeah.
You have to do some building before you get it back to zero.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to try and build from there to get it, to improve like you had intended all along.
Yeah. So you have to think about it like, what is it worth to protect my investment? And for me, if I'm going to invest, over $1 million in something, I'm going to be willing to spend the coin to make sure that I'm investing properly and that, I'm protecting my investment and making sure that it is what, the potential seller says it is.
Right. So really what we're talking about on this episode is due diligence.
100.
Because we can talk about, some of the other scenarios you're dealing with where there was some questions on actual ownership of a business that was sold. And, that could have easily been caught in due diligence as well with enough research. And, you have a due diligence period for a reason. I know we see businesses, we get excited, we want to buy it, because you see the potential in this business, right? And we're dealing with this now. We looked at a business, we gave it a once over, ran some numbers, everything looked good. As we've dug deeper and we're not even in our due diligence period yet, but as we're kind of doing negotiations, okay, let's dig deeper. We've found some things that we feel reduces the value of this company. And they were aware of it already. It just, as we took deeper and deeper steps into researching this business, it became obvious that, it wasn't even as to the level that we thought it was when we first glanced it over. And as we actually potentially get under contract, we'll dig deeper and, then renegotiations can happen if necessary.
Well, it's like, a lot of times it's just a different perspective, right? What might seem like the greatest thing ever to one person might be a bad thing to you because you're coming at it from a different perspective. And so, it's not necessarily that these sellers are trying to do something bad. And maybe, hypothetically speaking, maybe that seller didn't even know. I know I've met so many business owners that because they're out of the financial kind of operations of their company, they couldn't even tell you if stuff is right. Like I was talking to one of my clients yesterday and I was like, hey, dude, we bought a whole bunch of stuff last year. Where is it on your balance sheet? And he was like, oh, yeah, I just yelled at my bookkeeper yesterday.
Well, and that's the thing. Not all bookkeepers are created equal either. Right. And so many things get mislabeled or miscategorized. And that is when you dig deeper,
Yeah.
ask questions, you realize, oh, this was not a job. This was a loan.
Yeah.
Or this was a PPP forgiveness,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And I mean, it's not, and that's what I mean. It's not the business. Sometimes it really isn't the business owner's fault, right? And so, because not all accounting professionals are created equal, and this client that his stuff isn't on the balance sheet, he's more attuned to those sorts of things. I mean, partially because he's been working with me long enough that I'm like, what? So now he gets it. But a lot of people, they know how to do the job, and accounting and, bookkeeping and all that stuff, just especially nowadays when you have so many systems that are integrated with QuickBooks that those systems add stuff. If you don't have every T crossed and I dotted, your QuickBooks can get messy very, very quickly. I've seen some messy things lately with new clients. And so having those processes, you don't know what you're walking into, with a potential buy. And so you have to kind of like look under the hood. It's just like with a house, maybe there's foundation issues. That's why you hire, say you have an inspector and he's like, I don't like this crack. You wouldn't just be like, oh, okay, whatever, the crack is fine. You're going to then get a structural engineer, hopefully, to investigate the crack. And so you need to, when, a kind of a flag goes up, you need to investigate deeper before just being like,
Well, I mean, that's a great equivalent because you think about it. Okay, an inspection costs what, $500, $800 depending. And we're talking residential, commercial is much more expensive. Right. But, they're saying, hey, I don't know about this. This could be potentially a bigger issue. Now you have to spend maybe a couple $1,000s on a structural engineer. So it becomes one of those things that's a cost burden, right? Mm-hmm. And it sucks if you get that structural engineer to come in and they're like, yeah, this is going to be, but it's going to be a $25,000, $30,000 fix within a couple years if you buy this place. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now you're out maybe, $2,500, $2,800. But what did you save yourself in the long run by spending this money up front to get that information? And this, we're talking about purchase, but due diligence in your own business, taking the steps to check in with your bookkeeper quarterly or, at least semi-annually or annually to make sure everything's labeled right. So, you want to have a good understanding of your own business. Mm-hmm. And so to know that you're hitting your goals properly, if you're building that number toward your goal and you realize that you've counted something that shouldn't be counted toward that goal, then, you think you're further ahead than you are. And that only hurts yourself in the long run. So due diligence, doesn't only go just for buying the business. You need to be in those books for your own business, for your own understanding of where your business stands.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, especially in construction, like I was talking to a potential new client yesterday, and they were having issues with their books when it comes to their bonding company and getting the correct bonds. And they were like, we realize it's such a mess and we don't even know where to start. And so we created a plan, and now we're going to work that plan to get it right. But it's the same thing. If you're going to go sell, you gotta be tight. And, I think your financial house needs to be in order before you sell the business. But also when you're buying a business, you need to make sure their financial house is in order, because you're buying their bad processes.
Right. And if you're, most of us are buying a business to try to improve it to, then potentially sell it down the line, or even just take the improved cash flow, the improved processes as income for yourself. All of that needs to be factored into the current value so that you're building toward a value that makes sense based on what you know.
Yeah. Well, and then another way to protect yourself when you're buying a business is to make sure you have the correct non-competes and non-solicitation agreements. Because I know people love to say they're getting out of the industry or they're retiring. But I had a client who the person they bought the business from didn't actually retire and is now trying to compete with them in the same town, in the same business. And,
And that hurts you. I mean, they have previous relationships that they built with your client base.
Yes, 100%. No, they sold that option to you. And a lot of people have been bringing up this new FTC ruling, which gets rid of non-competes. But it doesn't get rid of non-competes for officers of corporations. So if you buy a business from someone, that non-compete is 100% still enforceable. But more than that, non-solicitation and non-circumvention agreements, where they can't circumvent your business in any way. They can't, take your clients, take your employees, because they sold that to you. It's no longer theirs, right? They created this thing, and it became something, and you bought it. So they can't then continue to use it because it's not theirs. They don't have legal right to it.
Right. I mean, that's a protection for you as the buyer, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what stops somebody from saying, "Ooh, I'm going to sell this business. I've built it. It's really great. I'm just going to sell this to this person, but I'm going to secretly move over to this company and then talk to all my clients and get them to move over." So then they get to benefit off of that twice, And
I've actually, what's crazy is this was a while ago, but now you said that, it made me think of, there was this guy on Facebook that I don't even know who was, but I'm in all these groups, and he was like, "Oh, I start, this kind of business, and I just grow it to a certain amount, and then I sell it, and then I just go one town over, do the same thing." And I'm like, first of all, that's messed up.
Yeah.
Secondly,
talking ethics is a whole other thing.
That's why you need to make sure too that you have not just 1 year, but you need to have long-term success in a business before you're buying it. It was like the one business we looked at, and I don't think that guy was trying to defraud us.
No, nothing like that.
In any way, shape, or form. But he had bought a business, and he skyrocketed it kind of overnight, and then he wanted, basically to forget about anything that happened with the old owner. It's like, yeah, but we need to take 3 years. We're not just going to take the last year and a couple of months. Like, that's not because I don't know if it's sustainable, a whole bunch of reasons. That's why you need to look at longevity in a business and not just buying something that someone decided to do 6 months ago.
Right. And, that's unfortunate for that particular seller because, he, I think, took over a business where the previous owner didn't really put a lot of effort into growing it. And like you said, I don't think there was anything ill-willed there. It just, we need a longer history as buyers. That's what makes us comfortable with understanding this business and knowing that that's sustainable and then, it's able to scale from there even further. Yeah.
It's like when I was talking about even in fantasy football, I was like, I want consistency, which I've had a lot of injuries, so it really hasn't consistency. They've been getting consistently injured, but that's beside the point. They were good. They would be consistent. I wanted consistency, right? And that's what you want in a business is you want consistency because when you see stuff that's all over the place, if their income looks like a roller coaster, their expenses look like a roller coaster, then better strap on for that ride. That doesn't sound very fun to me.
Well, yeah. And this is all the things you should be looking for in a due diligence period is looking for those kinds of highs and lows, their seasonality, right? You look at a business and their last 3 months look like they're rocking and they're like, yeah, we've implemented this plan. Things are skyrocketing. But if those last 3 months are, June, July, August, and you're heading into October, November, December, and January, and it's a seasonal business, well, yeah, those 3 months are always going to look like that every year. Mm-hmm. So, this is why we need the history. We want that full cycle, the full year cycle. It's the same thing in mortgage. The reason why they take 2 years of income and average it is because they want to see that. You can't take somebody's best sales month and say, oh, well, great, you made $25,000 last month. Let's go ahead and qualify you for a mortgage based on that income, $300,000 a year, when in reality, they had a $25,000 month, but that was preceded by 3 $5,000 months in a row.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So due diligence is so important. And I think that I can't, especially with all the things that I'm dealing with right now with clients and some extra crazy that is out there that hopefully no one else will ever have to deal with. But, really looking in and digging in and extend your due diligence period if you want, make it longer. Because honestly, if somebody doesn't want to give you the full due diligence and they don't want to give you all the answers and have you really digging in and asking why is not it's not to judge them. It's just to get attribution. Why is this the way it is? So that you can understand how the business is working and how you can improve it, quickly, or maybe how you need to run things. And so you just really need to delve into that due diligence.
Yeah. And that can be built into an LOI. I know when we submit an LOI, typically it says, all right, here's the due diligence period. We would like the right to extend that period if necessary, if we need to dig deeper on something. And if you get to that period and they're unwilling to extend,
That should tell you something too.
then maybe you need to step away. I mean, most sellers of businesses aren't in a huge hurry, right? There's no reason to be in a huge hurry unless there is. So
I personally wouldn't trust a hurry.
right. So yeah, take your time, do all the research you need to do, and then if something comes up that requires further evaluation and you're approaching that deadline, then ask for an extension. Just say, hey, look, there's this one thing I really I want to dig deeper on, and I don't want to overshoot our deadline here. Can we extend by, another 2 weeks, 30 days, whatever you think you need? And then you can go back and forth and negotiate from there. But it's better to be prepared. It's better to be, feel very comfortable that you've researched everything that you can. If something comes up later that you missed, I mean, so be it. But if you tried to rush the process and that's the reason you end up in a bad spot, you're going to feel bad for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't, because you can't put the baby back in the belly. Like once you sign those papers and you've bought it, it's yours, and then you have a huge burden of proof to prove that it wasn't just an oversight.
Well, and maybe once some of your clients get past some of these issues and they are in a better spot and they're settled, we'd love to have them on and actually have them tell some of these stories so you can, get kind of a firsthand experience of what that's like.
Once they're out of the fire, well,
exactly. Right now, we're gonna let them. We're gonna keep spraying water on that fire and try and get through that first.
Exactly. So we'll keep you updated, but we can't express enough to protect yourself in a buy position and truly do as much due diligence as you can. And any questions you have, get that question answered to where you feel comfortable, and hire whatever professionals you need in order to do that, because it's worth the money on the front end to not be in a bad spot on the back end.
Yeah, you literally can't do too much due diligence.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right, well, that's all I got for this episode. So
thanks for joining us on the Blue Collar Wealth Club. We'll talk to you next time.